Welcome to Expert Talk. It is my great pleasure to introduce you to today's guest, Dr. Rosemary Lehman, who is an author of several books and a consultant in the field of distance education, who for the past 20 years worked for the University of Wisconsin Extension and also worked with many different nonprofit and for-profit organizations, consulting them on distance learning. Today, we're going to talk about how to build online presence, and Dr. Lehman is the guru in this subject. She's written several books, as I mentioned before, and it's just wonderful to have her here. And please, I really hope that you're going to enjoy her wisdom and will take something from this discussion with you to your classroom. Since you are the guru in online presence, I wanted to start this discussion with just asking you, what does online presence mean to you?
Well, the question that you had given me was, what does online social presence mean?
Online presence mean to you?
Well, the question that you had given me was, what does online social presence mean? And actually, I'm glad you changed it now and left out the social, because in our book we talk about presence being more than social in our Creating a Sense of Presence in Online Teaching book. We talk about it being also psychological and emotional. And I just want to note our model for those who haven't read the book yet, and encourage them to do that, to not to talk about now because that would be too lengthy, but just to note our model and our framework that we've developed that expands on this idea of what presence is. And I just want to add that most people think of presence as a thing, I think, but it's really a process. And so because it's a process, it's elusive, it's a little bit harder to talk about than something more tangible. And it is psychological, social, and emotional. And it takes place, I think this is important too for people to remember. You need to create your presence before the course begins, as well as during the course and after. And sometimes there's the opportunity to also continue that presence with follow-up. So I think that's what I would say initially about online presence.
Okay, so the difference between social presence and online presence is that online presence you also include like emotional and psychological aspects, correct? Do I understand?
Right, and social is a part of it. Social is you're interacting with the instructor and with other learners and so on, but there's more to it than that. So we have added the psychological and the emotional aspects.
Okay, wonderful. So you said that online presence can be developed before, during, and after. Could you give like a little example of what you mean by especially before and after the course?
Right. Before the course, the way you develop your course and what you include in that course to get to know your students, and this could include your orientation. So you may get in touch with your students before the course begins if you're lucky enough to have their names and their email addresses, and or Facebook, however you're going to communicate with them, or through the LMS. And open that up before the course actually begins. Have some initial orientation activities, also ways that students can get to know other students. So this is something that's happening more and more, where we're expanding the length of the course by really thinking about it before the course begins, so when the students come to the course, they're ready and they're raring to go. And after the course, if you can do any follow-up with the students, sometimes this is possible, particularly in programs where students take more than one course within a program, and you can do follow-up with them.
Okay, thank you very much. So how do you know if someone has the presence online?
Well, there are certainly actually ways that you can measure this in your learning management system or your LMS through self-report. Students can let you know how they're doing if they feel that you're connecting with them and that you have created presence for them. There are also other tools in the LMS, the discussion boards, the activities you use, the feedback they give you when you ask for it, can all help determine if there has been a sense of presence created. But again, I want to emphasize that it's a process that you use, and so it's also something that you sense. I think when you're in the course and your students are responding to you and you're responding to them, you do get a sense. And I think it's very important for people to be aware of their feelings and how they think things are happening. So you do get a sense of if the students are present to you and if you're present to them. And one example I have, Simone and I talk about this often, actually it's many examples, but one particular one that occurs to me is when I was doing a combined synchronous and asynchronous course. And we were in the synchronous aspect of the course and had just gone into, I'd say, a third of the way through that session. And somebody at one of the remote sites all of a sudden said, "Oh my goodness, I thought we were in the same room. The technology seemed to disappear." And so that is a feeling. You see, it's not really a tangible thing, but it's a sense that they got because the course was well planned, because everybody knew what they were doing, because the activities engaged them and we were responding to them, and fulfilling their needs, that all of a sudden they had this sense that they were really in a room face to face and we weren't doing this via technology. And I think the same thing happens often in online courses. We've had reports from our students toward the end of the course that they really felt so engaged and they really felt our presence and we in turn felt theirs.
Very interesting. Yes, I think it's any online teacher's dream to reach that stage.
I know, and I say, when I tell this story, I say that's what we want to have happen all the time.
Exactly.
You know, it doesn't happen all the time, but we strive for it.
So what do you think, what are some strategies that you could recommend online teachers and trainers to incorporate into their practice so they reach that stage eventually?
Well, four strategies, main strategies that we talk about in our books are design strategies, and I'll go into these in a little detail. Design strategies, support strategies, teaching strategies, and time allocation strategies. And in the design strategies, I'm talking about the pre-planning. I think with online and any distance learning courses, you do much more pre-planning than you do in a face-to-face course. You need to have things ready so that when the course starts, you're really there to put your energy into the course. So the pre-planning, anticipating your course responsibilities and having those laid out ahead of time. Prioritizing your course, but anticipating your course responsibilities. What are you responsible for during the course and also in the pre-planning stages? And we have a template in our second book, which is on managing and prioritizing your time when you teach online. We do have a template that helps you look at those course responsibilities.
Oh, that's
and also prioritize your course activities.
Wonderful.
Another part of the design is predicting your learners' needs, and the more you can find out about their needs ahead of time, the better you are. And reflecting on, if you're teaching a course again, spending time reflecting on the course you previously taught, and then revising it to meet the new context of your course that you're going to be teaching, and also the new students that you'll be having in your course. And then support strategies. There's one-on-one support that you provide your learners. There's institutional support, and I can't say enough about that. There's peer support, students supporting each other. And then there's the external support, which would be the resources that you can provide to your students, like the help desk or many other kinds of organizations and resources that are on your campus. Teaching strategies, of course, there's designing your course, and most instructors design their own courses, although many of them also have some help from course designers. Administrative strategies, how are you going to administrate your course, and what are the things you need to know to do that? And this would be more, not so much involved in the content, but just the logistics of the course and how you do that. Facilitative strategies in teaching. Are you going to be a mentor during the course? Are you going to be a lecturer? Are you going to be a tutor? Are you going to more facilitate what's happening, or a mix of all of those? So thinking about that and what your role or roles will be. And then, of course, there's the evaluative part of it. How are you going to evaluate the course, and what are the tools that you can use to evaluate? I just want to interject that Simone and I are going to be doing a 3-day conference. It's the OTL conference for Josie Bass, and we're doing that the 18th, 19th, and 20th of this month. And one of the interesting things that's going to happen is we're going to talk mainly about our second book, Managing Your Workload and Your Time. But on the third day, we're pairing up with another person who is going to relate back to what we've said and give some ideas for actual tangible tools that you can use for carrying out your course. So there will be evaluative tools there. There'll be administrative tools, facilitative tools, and design tools that we'll be talking about. Allocation strategy. And those include being organized, being disciplined, distinguishing between work and your personal life, which is very hard to do sometimes because teaching online can be overwhelming unless you really set up your boundaries. And then being flexible. So that kind of rounds out what I wanted to say about the main strategy.
Wonderful, thank you. So what do you think are some advantages of establishing this online presence?
Well, the main one, I think, is retention. Absolutely, because it's been shown in the research that one of the main reasons for lack of retention in online is that people feel isolated and they feel as though they're really disconnected. So I think, and this is our definition of presence, I think a feeling of being there and being with others in the online environment is essential to keeping those students in the course and, of course, meeting their needs as you're doing this. But giving them a sense that the course was designed for them and their needs are being met and that you're very accessible and that other learners are accessible also.
Okay. And what do you think are some obstacles for teachers for creating their presence, and how can they overcome them?
Well, I think one of the major ones is the way we think. We think, those of us, and I'm one of them, who learned in the typical classroom, we think in a certain kind of way, and I think we have to become more open-minded and more flexible and look at the online environment as it is and try not to make it where our classroom was, because in our traditional classroom, because in many instances that was not the best experience. So I think having a very flexible and open and creative mind. Another thing that I think is really important is visualization. To visualize, because you're not going to be right there with your learners, to visualize your learners at their remote locations or wherever they are in the online course, and to try and imagine, to put yourself in their shoes. And one of the best pieces of advice I ever received was, before you teach online, be an online learner, so that you know what they're experiencing and you can better adapt your teaching to that environment. So I think those things are very important. Another obstacle is a lack of administrative support. Inflexible policies, a lack of funding, a lack of really understanding what online teachers do. And our session with the OTL conference this year, last year we did it on presence, this year we're doing it, and for instructors. This year we're doing it for administrators, and we're doing it on managing workload, and also, of course, bringing presence in. But I don't think that administrators who haven't taught online or haven't taken online courses have a clue as to what's involved. So I think that's very important, so that instructors get sufficient funding, incentives, technical support, and training. This is very important. Another obstacle, and I alluded to this before, is the tendency to let our online work take over our life. And it's very important not to do that. It's very easy to think you're connected 24/7, but you do have to create boundaries, and we talk a lot about this in our second book on managing workload. I have a husband, and I have a big family. They're not home with me, but they're scattered. But I have to be very mindful of saving time for them, and also the organizations that I'm involved with. So it's a real balancing act, but you do have to set limits. And so an important part of designing your course is letting your learners know when you're available and when you're not available, how soon you'll respond, and living up to that, and being very accessible but not overly accessible.
Oh, absolutely. Such a great point. I remember my first class teaching online. I was pretty much with my laptop in my bed, waking up at 2 o'clock in the morning, thinking that I need to respond to the email right away. And it was pretty much a policy almost in my organization where I worked at that time. And I was completely burned out. And then slowly I figured out how to balance, because you're right. You know, this is important, but it's also just a part of your life too.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So I have the last question. What is online presence? Do you think that online presence similar to your face-to-face presence? Why yes or why not?
There are some similarities, but the context is entirely different, and it's different in a variety of ways. It's different in space because you're not in the same space. It's different in time because you don't just have one scheduled class. In many cases with online, students can access at any time, and you can access at any time. The boundaries are different in the classroom, within four walls. In online courses, there really are no boundaries. Everything is space. The way you use your senses is different, because in the classroom, everyone's there. You can read body language and have eye contact. You can't do that in the online environment, so you need to adapt your senses and figure out ways to accommodate. The level of interaction, I think, is different. I think you need to plan ahead and integrate interaction more in online work than in the classroom. Your level of planning, I mentioned this before, is different. And your teaching effort is different. You have to be very, very focused for different periods of time, where in the classroom you're focused for 50 minutes. But your focus and your teaching effort is much more, I would say, takes a lot more of your energy, particularly in synchronous teaching. And I've done a lot of synchronous teaching with video conferencing and web conferencing. And you really have to focus and pay such attention with your eyes and your ears during that period of time that it takes a lot of energy and a lot of effort. Mm-hmm. So I think those are some of the differences. Mm-hmm. The similarity is you're teaching, and you're teaching to learners, and you are an instructor.
Right. Well, is there anything else that you would like to add that I did not ask that you think is very important for us?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I can't think of anything else right now except to say that creating presence is essential. There was one question about is there any time when it isn't important to create presence? I think when you're just delivering information, as some courses are, you're just giving information, it may not be as important, but I think there always should be an element of presence in the way you create that information and also in the way you respond to your learners. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I just feel presence is so essential in online learning.
Absolutely. Well, Rosemary, thank you so much for this very valuable information. I think everybody will benefit from that, and will definitely make sure that teachers know about your books and the conference that's coming up. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Lehman, and thank you everybody for watching this episode. If you liked it, please click like, and also please provide your comments below this video so Dr. Lehman and we can address your questions, or just to share your opinion about how to create online presence. And if you're not on my list yet, please subscribe and enjoy your day. Conquer the distance.